Valentine's Day, 14th of February 2018, lunchtime, Rockdale, Sydney South. A man walks out of Fitness First Gym on West Botany Street and gets into his black luxury four-wheel drive. He is not in patches. He is not carrying a weapon. He is carrying a gym bag. A grey Mercedes-Benz pulls up beside him. The window comes down. He is shot at least 6 times. He goes into cardiac arrest in the driver's seat. An ambulance takes him to St. George Hospital. He dies there. The man in that car was Mahmoud Mick Hawi, the man who at 22 years old became the youngest supreme commander in the history of the Comanchero motorcycle club. The man who 6 years earlier had stood in front of cameras after a deadly brawl at Sydney Airport and called for peace. The man who had served time for manslaughter. The man who had tried, by every public account, to step away from the world that made him. The grey Mercedes was found torched and abandoned in a nearby lane. As of July 2026, nobody has been charged with his murder. Thank you for watching our video. Don't forget to hit subscribe to support us. That is exactly what keeps us going and gives us the motivation to keep making the next one. Now, let's go back to where this starts. About what we are actually fighting. Mahmoud Hawi was born in Beirut on the 9th of May 1980. He was 5 years old when his family emigrated to Sydney, arriving in 1985 in the middle of the Lebanese Civil War. Western Sydney, a community of Lebanese-Australian families building lives in a city that was not always welcoming. In 1999, at 19 years old, he joins the Comanchero Motorcycle Club. In 2003, 4 years after joining and 22 years old, he becomes national president, not through an orderly succession, through the confrontation at Jock Ross's property that this series has already documented. The group that arrives at Ross's home beats the much older man and takes his colours. The title Ross gave himself, Supreme Commander, Hawi claims for himself, the youngest man to hold it, 11 years after Jock Ross founded the club, standing in the position of the man who started it all at 22 years old. 22 March 2009, a Qantas domestic flight from Melbourne to Sydney. Hawi is on board. So is Derek Wainohu, National President of the Hells Angels Australia. 2 leaders of rival organisations on the same plane. Words are exchanged during the flight. By the time the plane lands, both men have sent text messages to their respective members. Come to the airport, now. At Gate 5 of Sydney Airport's domestic terminal, one of the busiest public spaces in Australia, dozens of Comancheros and Hells Angels converge. What follows is described by witnesses as chaotic, wild, and uncontrolled. The men are raging. In the middle of it, Anthony Zervas, 29 years old, the younger brother of Hells Angels member Peter Zervas. He is not a patched Hells Angel. He is an associate. He is beaten with a 17-kilogram steel bollard, stabbed multiple times in the chest. He dies from massive head injuries. Hawi is heard screaming after the brawl. Next time we see you, you're going to have bullets through you. The brawl is captured on airport security cameras. The footage becomes evidence in one of the largest Bikie prosecutions in Unsolved's history. The incident directly triggers the establishment of Unsolved's police strike force Raptor, the dedicated anti-Bikie unit that would operate for years, targeting outlaw motorcycle club activity across the state. Hawi is charged with murder. The trial runs for 9 months. In November 2011, he is found guilty. Murder. Sentenced to a minimum of 21 years with a maximum of 28. He is 31 years old. He will be in his 50s before parole. Then, the appeal. The NSW Court of Criminal Appeal examines the conviction. Chief Justice Tom Bathurst writes that he cannot be satisfied beyond reasonable doubt that Hawi inflicted fatal blows to the head of Zervas using the bollard. The murder conviction is quashed. Hawi pleads guilty to manslaughter. In 2014, he is resentenced. He is released in 2015 after the parole board finds he has shown satisfactory prison performance. He has served roughly 3.5 years for the manslaughter of a man beaten to death at Sydney Airport with a 17-kilogram steel bollard in front of security cameras and dozens of witnesses. That gap between the original 21-year murder sentence and the 3.5 years actually served sits in the public record without a clean resolution. His lawyer speaks outside court. Hawi says nothing publicly. By every public account available, Mick Hawi spent the years after his release trying to step away from the world that had defined him. He kept a low profile. He avoided the visible trappings of gang leadership. He was no longer supreme commander. Duax Nakaru had taken that position. The Comancheros had moved on structurally. Hawi was not running anything, or at least, nothing the public record confirms he was running. He went to the gym. He trained. He lived quietly in Sydney's south. Whether that quietness was genuine withdrawal, or the kind of tactical invisibility that experienced criminal figures sometimes adopt when law enforcement pressure is high, is a question the public record does not answer. What the public record does show is that by early 2018, the world he had tried to leave had not finished with him. Rumors circulated that he had a bounty on his head. There were suggestions of bad blood between him and current Comanchero leader Mark Buddle. Whether those rumors were accurate, and whether they are connected to what happened on Valentine's Day, the investigation that followed his death has not publicly resolved. Shortly after midday, on 14th February 2018, Valentine's Day, Hawi walks out of Fitness First on West Botany Street in Rockdale. He gets into his black luxury four-wheel drive. A grey Mercedes-Benz station wagon pulls up. He is shot at least 6 times. He goes into cardiac arrest. Witnesses call emergency services. Paramedics arrive. He is transported to St. George Hospital in a critical condition. He dies there. He is 37 years old. In Nurse WL's police attend in force. A riot squad and multiple patrol cars are deployed outside the hospital. Officers ask media not to photograph the hospital entrance, describing it as a sensitive situation. The grey Mercedes is found shortly afterward, torched and abandoned in Chandler Lane, Rockdale. The vehicle is destroyed. No usable forensic evidence is recovered from it. A major investigation begins. Detectives interview witnesses. Footage from the area is reviewed. As of July 2026, no charges have been laid in connection with his murder. Nobody has been arrested. Nobody has been prosecuted. The case remains officially open and unsolved. Born Beirut, 9th of May 1980. Arrived Sydney 1985. Joined Comanchero 1999. Became Supreme Commander 2003 at age 22. 2008. Comanchero Hells Angels War escalates across Sydney. 22nd March 2009. Sydney Airport Brawl. Anthony Zervas beaten to death. Hawi convicted murder November 2011. Sentenced minimum 21 years. Appeal quashed conviction 2014. Pleaded guilty manslaughter. Released 2015 after approximately 3.5 years. Attempted to maintain low profile post-release. February 14, 2018. Shot at least 6 times outside Fitness First Rockdale. Died St. George Hospital, aged 37. Getaway vehicle torched and abandoned nearby. No charges laid, case open, unsolved. Here is what the full public record of Mick Hawi's life shows, and the questions it cannot answer. A Lebanese-Australian kid arrives in Sydney at 5 years old fleeing a civil war. He joins a motorcycle club at 19. He becomes its supreme commander at 22, the youngest man to hold that title, through a violent confrontation with the man who built the organization. He leads it through a period of expansion and conflict that culminates in a death at Sydney Airport in front of security cameras and dozens of witnesses. He is convicted of murder and sentenced to 21 years. The conviction is quashed on appeal. He serves 3.5 years for manslaughter. He tries to step away. He is shot dead at 37 in a gym car park on Valentine's Day. Nobody has been charged. The first question this raises: when the most public gang-related killing in NSW since the Sydney Airport brawl itself, captured in full daylight in a busy suburb, with a getaway vehicle that was deliberately destroyed, produces no arrests and no charges in more than 7 years, what does that tell us about the limits of what the justice system can achieve against targeted organised crime violence. The second question is harder. Mick Hawi took the Comanchero presidency at 22 by walking into an old man's house and taking his colours. The organisation he built in the years that followed expanded, went to war, killed at an airport, drove the establishment of Strikeforce Raptor, and eventually produced the leadership chain that ran through Nakuru, Buddle, Murray and Mian, the same chain that brought the Comanchero to New Zealand and the methamphetamine supply chains that Operation Texas was still dismantling in 2026. He set that in motion. Whether he understood what he was setting in motion at 22, when he stood in the position of the man he had just removed, is something the public record does not tell us. What it does tell us is what the position cost him. The man who called for peace talks with the Hells Angels 4 days after the airport brawl. The man who kept a low profile after prison and trying to stay out of it. Found in a car park at 37. The lesson is not that the world of organised crime punishes its leaders. Sometimes it does, sometimes it does not. The lesson is that the organisation Mick Hawi built at 22, with the energy and ambition and violence of a young man who did not yet understand what structures outlast the people who build them, was still running, still expanding, still causing harm in 2 countries, long after he had tried to walk away from it. You can leave a position. You cannot leave what the position produced. What do you reckon? When a man who tried to step away from the world he built is killed in a gym car park and nobody is ever charged, what does that tell us about who actually controls the story?